Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the masterclass, The City That Never Sleeps, Cities of Tomorrow. You are requested to please put your mobile phones on silent mode and turn on the Bluetooth and briefly open the GES 2017 app to make use of its interactive features. This masterclass will address what will the cities of tomorrow look like. Panelists will discuss whether they can be sustainable and what threats and opportunities are available as cities become smarter and get on the digital grid. We welcome our moderator for the session, Ms. Anjana Menon, founder and CEO, Content Pixies. We welcome our panelists, Mr. Amitabh Kant, Chief Executive Officer, Niti Aayog, the National Institution for Transforming India, Mr. Amory Lovins, co-founder and chief scientist, Rocky Mountain Institute, Ms. Priyanka Bakaya, founder and CEO, Renewlogy. I request Anjana to please take over from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning and welcome to the session today. When the term smart cities was first coined, most people thought it was going to be about ICT communicating better communication between cities, faster communication with the citizens. But as technology has evolved, the smart city itself has become a completely different concept. It's about a city that is more sustainable, has fewer carbon emissions. It's a city that's planned for citizens rather than a city that is planned by the municipality. And also increasingly a city that is more affordable to live in. So I'm going to try and moderate the session, keeping all of those things in mind, talking about sustainability, recycling, how do you look at energy, the use of energy, how can you build smarter cities, better homes, what are the challenges in a developing country versus a developed country. I'll go through our panelists. Of course, they don't need any introduction. They're stalwarts in their own field of work. Amory Lovins is co-founder and chief scientist of Rocky Mountain Institute. It's the premier think tank on energy. He was talking about alternative energy before most of us in the room knew the term.
But we're a think and do tank. The important word is and.
And he's an advisor to more than 65 governments. He's written more books and papers than I can possibly count. And we're delighted to have him here. Amitabh Kant, he's the CEO of Niti Aayog. I think I remember from my days, my first introduction to him many years ago, and the first conversation point was smart cities, before anyone, I think, in the country remotely knew what a smart city was, or before the idea was even populated. He's helped galvanize about 100 cities in India to bid and become smart cities or smarter cities. Priyanka Bakaya, lady entrepreneur, so full marks from my side, given this is a conference on women entrepreneurs. 40 under 40 influencer. She's on the Fortune list. She's founded PK Energy, which converts plastic waste into usable fuel. And her remarkable work has won many awards, including MIT's Clean Energy Prize. So thank you, everyone, for joining me. Amory, I'm going to start with you. What is the term? What do you mean when you say smart city? And I'm talking about the city of the future. For you, what is a smart city?
It's designed around the customers, namely the citizens. Something we learned in Curitiba, Brazil, from the architect Jaime Lerner when he was mayor. Instead of being siloed in bureaucracies that are organized for their own purposes, it makes things work and delivers the services the customers need in a way that's convenient to them. So, for example, Curitiba has a lot of social services. And if you're a single mother with 3 kids and 2 of them get sick one morning and just as you're leaving for work, you ring one number and they handle everything that needs to be handled. And they never try to do just one thing. being smart means designing the way nature does, so that you solve, or better still, avoid a problem in a way that solves or avoids many other problems at the same time. And if you actually want to read how they did this before the age of IT, go to the next to last chapter in our 1999 business book called Natural Capitalism. And I think even today, it holds very important lessons for how to design the way we do things in cities so that we behave with elegant frugality. And there are actually two very good handbooks out now, one by the China Development Bank Capital firm called 12 Green Guidelines. And it goes through 12 different areas of how to design and run cities better. So it's the Green and Smart Urban Development Guidelines for CDBC. And the other one Rocky Mountain Institute just put out is called the Carbon-Free City Handbook. And it's all full of wonderful case studies, all documented so you can look them up in the original sources and see how these things were done. So it is indeed not just about IT. That IT is a tool, a very valuable one. And perhaps we'll talk later about the initiative that we have the honor to support Niti Aayog in transforming personal mobility in India, which is a complete IT mashup. It's not just about electrification. But that's just one of the 12 major categories that we need to integrate, and not separately, but together.
Amitabh, in a country like India, the challenges are very, very different. It's already really densely populated. Cities sort of have evolved as the population has evolved. What are the challenges specifically in developing smart cities in densely populated countries like India?
Anjana, cities occupy 3% of the earth's land mass, but globally, 80% of the GDP comes from cities. But they also account for about 78% of the CO2 emissions. I think the challenge for countries like India is not to follow the Western model of urbanization. Land, gas, and water were cheaply available when America and Europe urbanized. All these were cheaply available. So Americans had the luxury of living in New Jersey, traveling to New York, creating big, big limousines, guzzling gas. They had the luxury of creating a city like Atlanta where 99.7% of the people travel by cars. Nobody walks, nobody cycles. So they created the most polluting cities of the world. They created cities for cars and not for people. The lesson for all of us in emerging countries, the process of urbanization has ended in America, it's ended in Europe, it's nearing its completion in China. The process of urbanization has just begun in India. Next 5 decades, we'll do more urbanization than what we've done in the last 5,000 years. And the challenge is that we don't repeat the mistakes of the Western world. We must create compact, dense cities on the back of public transportation. Embed your cities not with cars, but with public transportation. Recycle your water, recycle your waste. Don't create the kind of waste which America does. That's the challenge. And I'm very fortunate to be sitting next to Priyanka, who's such a legendary person. So she'll tell you more about what America does to damage the process of living in American cities. But the challenge is, to my mind, smart cities is about people. How do you make better livability? And better livability does not come from sprawling cities. And the challenge is that many of our urban designers, many of our architects have all been trained in American universities. And they've all been trained to do sprawling cities. They've all been trained to make large roads for cars. But the challenge is that livability does not come from sprawling cities. The more sprawling your city, the higher the CO2 emissions. The better livability comes from compact, dense urbanization.
In fact, if I may add examples to reinforce your point, Atlanta has 10 times the carbon emissions of Barcelona, which has the same population, and a lot of that is from transit. In Houston, 14% of all the economic activity pays for moving people about. In Copenhagen, it's 4%. Look at all that extra wealth and what we could do with it. And as Enrique Peñalosa said, the former mayor of Bogota, which is a pioneer in many of these areas, including bus rapid transit, a truly advanced nation is not one in which all the poor have cars. It's one in which all the rich people ride public transit. But of course, the best form of public transit, as Dave Brower said, is all those who believe in it raise your right foot. That is, designing cities so we both integrate and distribute where people live, shop, work, play, worship, so that you can get around without needing a vehicle at all, because everything you need is within hundreds of meters.
So, you know, since our process of urbanization has just begun, if we were to follow the American model of urbanization, we will require 4 planet Earth. But alas, we have only 1 planet Earth. And therefore, India needs to do a very innovative, very sustainable process of urbanization, which is what our smart city movement is all about. It's people-centric, it's public transport-centric, it's recycling-centric, it's water recycling-centric, and that, to my mind, makes it a far more livable concept. So, what the countries like India should do? Unlearn everything that America has taught.
Gandhiji already said it, that he was asked what he thought of American civilization. He said, I think it would be a very good idea.
Priyanka, your focus is on plastics. And we had this conversation before that one of the things that drives everybody mad is the excessive use of single-use plastic. Do you want to buy an apple, and how many cartons of plastic should it come in? So how do cities cut back on this and get rid of this habit of single-use plastic? Again, hugely, like Amitabh said, massively Western model. If I try to buy an apple here, it's just going to be handed to me in my hand, and I can do what I want to with it.
Yes, no, definitely agree that India has unique opportunities and challenges to learn from what has worked in other places and see what aspects to apply to the Indian context. And I was telling you about this, that when I look at my grandparents' generation, really how they handled their waste is the example of those traditional models is actually what would be better, like the tiffin boxes that you use in India to eat your lunch every day instead of all the plastic waste we generate with polystyrene, takeout containers in the US, reusable bags, every single thing. Even when I used to visit India in my childhood, the Coke would come in glass bottles, which you'd take back to the store. There was just no waste. And it's really actually those traditional models that make so much more sense for the planet as a whole. And I think the rest of the world should really learn from India. And I hope that the younger generation here doesn't just sort of blindly accept what's been happening in the West in this trend, and really actually looks back to their roots and sees, what has worked, historically. The other unique opportunity is that, waste management is handled here by waste pickers, which are, one of the most marginalized communities in the country. And it's really an opportunity to try to work with the waste pickers and empower them. So far, they do, I've spoken to a lot of these waste pickers in Pune, for instance, and they get exploited at the bottom of that pyramid. They collect the waste, and then there's so many layers of scrap dealers that they have to get through, and there's just no way for them to improve their livelihood. And I think both government and private sector need to think of ways to really find ways to lift up the waste pickers in terms of using them, because they're helping in terms of sustainability. If you look outside in the morning, you can see them sweeping, you can see them collecting the waste. They're providing such a great service to society. And how to, encourage them to keep that sustainability while also empowering them and educating them. Being a women's conference, Over 70% of waste pickers are women. In Pune, that number is 90%. So this is, you know, a unique opportunity to empower women at the bottom of the pyramid while also, you know, achieving sustainability goals. But this won't happen unless we really create incentives, you know, both on the policy side and, you know, for the private sector, for companies like me, when I enter India, to see that, okay, you know, there's, you know, incentives for me to work directly with these waste pickers and empower them. So, you know, it's one thing to talk about this at a conference saying women first, but, you know, we also have to think of policy measures to encourage this.
And also, I guess, to a great extent, people themselves need to be sensitized to this and realize that it's not it's a service we take for granted.
Yes.
But stop taking it for granted.
Exactly.
And look at how we're being helped out. Anne-Marie, the city of the future, everyone talks about the millennial, which is probably everyone there, but not here. So the consumption pattern of all millennials, it's changing really rapidly. When I have a conversation, the keywords are you part of the gig economy? Are you part of the sharing economy? And if you're not, well, I think I'm doing something wrong. So how to shape a city for this millennial, where the consumption pattern is completely different to probably what all of us have experienced?
Well, to follow on Amitabh's earlier point about how do we move around in a city, one of the 12 or so main areas to look at, that will be shared, connected, electric, very IT rich, and it offers options like real-time congestion pricing. So the municipal government could actually dial down pollution and congestion in real time wherever they're occurring without adding infrastructure, because it's all in the software, and the millennials will be writing the software. The ride-hailing database for the shared vehicles where you need a vehicle will be open, flat, and free, so that every rickshaw driver gets to compete with Ola and Uber to get to your screen, and whoever is nearest you will be dispatched. This is a remarkable transformation of the urban landscape. And then we can meanwhile be redesigning the urban landscape around, as Amitabh said, people, not cars, feet, not wheels. So that instead of arterial networks designed for cars, we would have a dense capillary network, some streets for walking and biking, some for one way, some for the other way, driving, some for bus rapid transit, and so on. And of course, everything you want near you, as it is in any city that grows organically. But if you use the capillary network, you have much richer social and commercial life and social interactions. It's much more convivial. It's a much more exciting place. And you free up you get rid of 2/3 of the vehicle movement and 1/3 of the concrete. Then you can have parks, you can create more real estate value. And there are some interesting ways also to promote the densification. In Haryana, I understand there's now an experiment running where a building with an energy index, EPI, under 100, which means it's quite efficient, gets a 25% extra floor area ratio. And the developers are starting to stampede to that because they make so much more money that way. Another thing a municipal government could easily do is any super efficient building goes to the head of the queue for any approvals required. That costs the government nothing but time and money to a developer. So I'm not sure I've exactly answered your question, but I think the melding of the sharing economy into services like mobility will be absolutely essential. And of course, if you do the smart battery designs we've been discussing in the India Leaps Ahead report in May, it means if I'm a rickshaw driver, I can get an electric rickshaw, completely quiet, non-polluting, without a battery, cheaper than a fueled rickshaw, but then I can lease the battery by the kilometer cheaper than I was paying for petrol. So I win at both ends. And then I get access to all the drivers through the connectivity of the smart app that helps you get from where you are, and the phone knows where you are, to where you want to be.
I have a lot of questions on that for later, the use of the battery, replacement batteries, and so on. But Amitabh, going back to your point about smart cities and the challenges in India, a lot of the cities that have bid, for example, for smart cities are existing, thriving cities with everything laid out. How do you pick out smart pockets in that? And if you do develop smart pockets, how do you sort of manage what will become the unsmart ghettos, or the risk of the unsmart ghetto within a city?
You know, Anjana, the most critical thing in any smart city that we're doing is to involve people. You know, you can do any kind of IT, you can do any kind of roads, you can do any kind of infrastructure, but if the people are not smart, you can't take the city along. I mean, you can never take the city into the next big leap without smart people. So the whole process of urbanization has to be people-centric. That's number one. And it has to start, and one of the great things India did was to undertake this process of the challenge route. It challenged the cities to select themselves. And I'm very delighted that actually the first city to get selected was Bhubaneswar, and not Varanasi, which is the Prime Minister's constituency. That never got selected till the 4th round. But the great thing was that even today, I flew into Bhubaneswar a week back, where the auto rickshaw driver and the taxi driver, they all say that they are taxi drivers of the smart city of Bhubaneswar. So the people have a sense of ownership, and without that ownership, it will never happen. And number two, to my mind, the very critical factor of any process of urbanization is the process of monetization of land value. You know, when you embed your city with public transportation, and public transportation has huge costs. So you are trying to first embed your city with public transportation and the infrastructure and layers of smart city infrastructure, fiber network below. When you do that, values of land rise. You know, and when values of land rise in cities like India, you know, on one side you have an example of Gurgaon, where the real estate builders ate up the value of monetization. And on the other side you have Noida, where political parties ate up the process of monetization. So it's very important that the values, when you monetize land value, when you create infrastructure, land values will rise, capture those land values, put them back into the city for better water management, for better garbage management, for better sewage management. That is the challenge for India, and that requires you to create a special purpose vehicle, which Indian cities have done, to that special purpose. So make it, that special purpose vehicle must be able to capture the upsides and put it back into the city. And the challenge is that, so three things: make it people-centric, make it public transport-centric, make it recycling-centric, and fourthly, capture the upsides of the process of urbanization. That is the crux, to my mind, in
And
most developing countries.
one of the ways Curitiba drove those same objectives was to allow a bigger floor area ratio, that is basically taller buildings, nearest the transit corridors, just as, say, Copenhagen did later, very successfully. And they also made the land transaction database open and transparent on the web now. So that drove out a lot of the speculation and focused on creating real value. And it also helped drive out corruption.
You know, but to what extent do people who are not living along the public corridor, who say living on the periphery, how do you sort of manage their expectations?
Curitiba has 11 bus companies, all profitable last I looked, that offer cheap mobility, and the objective in designing the whole transit system was that you have more time at home with your family rather than stalled in traffic in a crowded bus. So they simply pay the bus companies not for how many people they carry, but for how many kilometers of route they serve. So they have an incentive to spread out and serve the entire community equitably. It works beautifully. And then with the bus rapid transit, which is like a metro system, congratulations to Hyderabad, but it's at about 5% the cost. It's like a surface subway. You can have, well, it's really a remarkable system. Uh, the bus pulls up every minute in rush hour, and big doors open, and people go in and out to the platform where they've already come in and paid their fare, and it's a big glass tube. Actually, I spent a day riding around the system. There was only one minor instance of vandalism in probably 100 stations I looked at, and it was already being fixed. And I noticed also people could easily get round the system because at the main terminals they could go in round the end without paying the fare. Nobody did. There were no guards. Why? Because they knew they got value from the system. It engaged civic pride, and they all wanted to support the system even though they didn't have much money. This is a city that happens to have a lot of car assembly plants, and the employees get a big discount. So it has the highest car ownership in the country except Brasilia, but the lowest car drivership because it's faster, cheaper, safer, more convenient not to drive.
And I guess it also goes back to Amitabh's point of a sense of ownership. If the people in the city have a sense of ownership, then things start falling in place. Priyanka, waste is a huge, huge problem, whether it's plastic, whether it's people using too much water, clothing. It's the whole overconsumption that I think Amitabh started with, the idea of us buying and using too many of the resources, way in excess of what we need. How do you get a city to be zero waste? Is that challenge different in a developing country and different in a developed country? I mean, it is, but how do you address it both ends?
Yeah, I think more and more we're seeing cities around the world setting zero waste goals, aiming to be zero waste by a certain year. But I think, the challenge they all face is, how to actually make that a reality. It requires both policy and innovation. And with the policy, it has to apply to all levels of the supply chain. So, the manufacturers of the products currently people who produce plastics, for instance, there's really no incentives for them to create products that are more easily recyclable versus, products that aren't, recyclable at all. And, we're more and more moving towards plastics that have multi-layers, which makes it even more difficult to recycle them. And so there's not any accountability there, and that's something that needs to happen on the policy side. Secondly, in terms of just citizens, having them educated and also incentivized to reduce their waste consumption. And, some cities have implemented programs, for instance, in San Francisco, if you skip 2 waste collections a month, you get 20% off your bill. So innovative approaches like that where residents are actually incentivized in some way to reduce less waste, because right now it's just, most places, it's just sort of like a nice thing to do. There's, nothing really driving citizens to think about that. And obviously citizens want these smart, beautiful cities, but long term that's the goal. But on a day-to-day basis, they just want a convenient life. So there needs to be incentives there to sort of get them moving towards those long-term goals. And the third end is the waste companies, and in the developed world, there's a disincentive which happens because often governments or private companies own landfills, and they're actually incentivized to keep landfilling the waste instead of recycling it, which creates this huge disincentive. So they're, really at all, the waste system's very broken, just sort of globally in general. And that's because there just doesn't exist the right incentives at each part of the value chain. So, it's not enough to think about we've implemented a recycling program and that's going to achieve our zero waste goals. You really need to think about incentives at each end of the value chain. And then, working with innovation and new technologies. And, there's some really, brilliant technologies that have been developed in this space. I want to highlight, since we have another female entrepreneur in the room today, Banca Bialu, which is a local, do you want to stand up? Which is a local company here based in Hyderabad. And what they do is create a solution to human waste. And so sanitation services provided for the bottom of the pyramid. So the toilets are able to take that human waste and create products such as biogas and fertilizers from it. So you're creating a solution to the waste while also providing a sanitation service and creating an energy source. And when you think about sustainability, you have to think about not just waste but energy, air pollution, emissions, and solutions like that are really sort of the solutions that are going to take India forward and globally forward. So, yeah.
In Curitiba, in Curitiba, factories are not allowed to dispose of waste except on their own land. So they have a very strong incentive not to make it, to design it out. And I was once going around the back of a store with the CEO of Walmart, the retail giant, and he was noticing a great deal of packaging about to be hauled away, and he realized he'd paid for it twice, once to buy it, once to dispose of it. He asked what should I do about this? I said, I think you should put it on the lorry going back to your suppliers and tell them, I'm not going to pay for this next time, figure it out, get rid of it. And they did. It was quite remarkable. An experiment you might try here in the schools is to ask the students for a week to carry around in a transparent plastic bag everything they throw away that week. That's a very quick education. And if you want to know how far this can be pushed, I once had a chap in a seminar who had not taken out the rubbish from his house for 2 years because he didn't need to. He'd got it down to about 4 grams a month. It was basically hearing aid batteries, just by buying very thoughtfully.
Amitabh, you talked about infrastructure, building the cities around. How do you, in a country like India, it's a huge behemoth task. So to what extent do you get the private sector involved, and is the formula really private-public partnership, or should it just be left to governments?
No, actually there are a lot of lessons available. If you look around, there are a huge number of lessons from within India and from outside. I mean, and many of these lessons don't come from the western part of the world. They come all from the eastern part of the world. I mean, great example of how to do a smart city comes from a small city called Kitakyushu in Japan, where the women of Kitakyushu, and that drove the industrialization of Japan. In 70s, the Tokai Bay on which it is based became absolutely, it was blue, pure blue. It became absolutely yellow. And the women of Kitakyushu rose in revolt against the huge amount of pollution. And they ensured that the Ministry of Trade and Industry, METI, which was a very powerful ministry actually, made it a completely recycling city. So if you go to Kitakyushu, everything is recycled. From mobile to transportation, everything is recycled. You look at Yokohama, where a young woman mayor reduced the waste of that city by 39.7%. 39.7% by creating a huge mass movement of segregation at household. Or Curitiba, where you are enabling buses to, everyone has access to a bus with rapid bus transport system within 1 minute of walking. Or look at Singapore, great model of recycling of water. Or great model of recycling of water. So huge examples. So look at Ahmedabad on bus rapid transport system. So there are huge examples of good urbanization available around. Look at all parts of the world. Don't look at America.
This reinforces the point that brains are evenly distributed. This reinforces the point that brains are evenly distributed, one per person. So most of them are in the east and the south. Half of them are in the heads of women. Most of them are in the heads of poor people, hence the Jagat tradition. And we all need to learn from each other. There are examples all over the place. One that came to mind when you were talking about the pollution in Japan was that the world's first environment minister, who was in Australia, solved the problem of industries dumping pollution in the rivers by requiring them to put their water intake downstream of their outfall. Very simple cybernetics.
Yeah, and there are a lot of cities that recycle their water 21 times, and London, I think, drinking water has gone through 21 rounds before it gets to everyone. Priyanka, the problem of plastics everywhere in oceans, you have animals eating plastic, falling sick. There's plastic in tap water. So it's just everywhere. Probably, we're breathing some form of it right now.
Yes.
Should there be is it time for a universal protocol on cutting down on plastics, just bringing this down drastically, or so that we can all live?
Yeah, no, I mean, I really think it's gotten to the point where it's going to start impacting human health. So it's estimated that by 2050, there'll be more plastic waste than fish in our oceans. And, given, where fish are in our food chain, that does ultimately enter our bodies. And, we still don't know what the health impacts of this are long-term. And we're really sort of spiraling out of control. We create 300 million tons of plastic each year, and globally only 10% of plastic gets recycled. And Indian recycling rates are much, much higher than the US. In the US, it's only 9%, and it's the US which is really driving down that recycling rate. But globally, this is a huge issue. And the challenge with plastics is plastics come from fuel to begin with, and so they're made out of a hydrocarbon, and then we create so many different types of plastic, and in order to recycle it, we need a pure stream. But of course, once we're done using our plastics, it all ends up very mixed, so it becomes challenging to recycle it. And what we've developed at Renewalogy is only one part of the solution, which is being able to chemically recycle mixed plastic waste streams. So innovation is part of it, but there does need to be an overall approach to saying that this has gone too far, and starting to have bans on the single-use plastics, such as the bags, and just so many things that we really don't need when you think about it at the end of the day. Straws and plastic utensils. There's so many things that we can avoid. So there does need to be policy that addresses that, and whether it be bans or just incentivizing residents to if you have to pay for a bag, creating those types of things. I really liked that idea of carrying around a plastic bag with all your waste for a week. We've actually done something similar at Renewalogy, where we do waste zero challenges, and we give people a glass mason jar, and we tell them try to limit your your overall waste to this jar over 4 weeks, or they can choose how long they do the challenge, and that really makes you think about how much waste are you generating, and makes you really accountable, and thinking about your choices when you're buying the product, and also what you're doing once you finish using a product. And I think our sort of modern, convenient lifestyle, we've just prioritized convenience over everything else, and we need to start having incentives in place to start focusing on making sure our planet doesn't go out of control with all this plastic that we're creating.
Amory, I know you're a great votary of the electric vehicle, the hypercar. But at what point, how do you make it affordable? Because right now, when people think electric vehicles, they think, Tesla mostly now, but the Prius, and there is a point where it's just not affordable for everyone. A lot of manufacturers themselves haven't shifted in India, because the first thing they'll say is, I don't know how to make it affordable. So how do you make it affordable, and how do you, I will ask Amitabh on how do you make it popular in a place like India, but for you the question is, how do you make it affordable?
Well, first you design the city so you don't need the car. And indeed, many young people in, for example, San Francisco, but in much of my country and in Europe, no longer aspire to own a car. It's cheaper and easier not to have one. You can, after all, enjoy a great meal without owning the restaurant. And this second biggest household asset in the United States sits idle 95% of the time. How stupid. It just occupies space. It takes very expensive parking. Actually, it needs 3 parking places, one at home, one where you work, one where you shop. Good Lord. What a use of land. So design it out, first of all. Second, use other modes, including walking and biking. Third, if you do need a vehicle, share it. And that way you get very high asset utilization, which strongly favors, by the way, electric traction, because then the saving on the operating energy and maintenance quickly overwhelms any initial higher capital cost, and that premium capital cost will go away in not many years now. especially with the ambitions that government of India is driving through our collaboration. Then, of course, there are technical things you can do to make the vehicle cheaper. One that I'm particularly fond of is to take out weight, and this need not compromise safety because you can use extremely strong light materials. Carbon fiber composites can now ultralight a car. Toyota saved 70% of the weight in one car they did it a decade ago out of carbon fiber, 420 kilos for a Prius-sized car, so it's a third the normal weight, half the normal fuel use. And in India, indeed, 90% of the energy it takes to move an auto is caused by its weight. In the US, about 2/3. So that's the most important thing to do if you want to save fuel and pollution. But also, if you're going electric, you save batteries, which currently are even dearer. So I drive a carbon fiber electric car from BMW. I live in a rural place, very big distances. And it turns out the carbon fiber is paid for by needing fewer batteries, which then recharge faster. Everything gets better when you take out weight. Henry Ford said that weight is only useful as a steamroller. And he was right. There are now manufacturing processes, including one we developed and sold into the supply chain, that can do a 2x2 meter complex carbon fiber structural auto part in 1 minute. And it's paid for by smaller propulsion system and by much simpler automaking with 80% less capital. So you take out the body shop, you take out the paint shop, the car becomes affordable. But better still not to need it, or if you have one, not to drive it, because we designed the city properly around people and feet.
You know, I'm hoping it'll happen in the big cities like Bangalore, where you can't really move because there's so much of vehicular congestion. So, Amitabh, how do you get the average Indian to not buy a car? I mean, one of the solutions is fabulous public transport, and we'll see how that pans out in Hyderabad. Hopefully, there'll be fewer cars on the road. But how do you get people who must have a car or want to have a car, keep a car, to keep an electric vehicle instead? And you know, the attendant problems of charging vehicles, and which is a completely, totally new ecosystem.
You know, when I was in school, we used to cycle down. You know, I mean, 20 kilometers I used to cycle down and back. We used to walk around, and simply because all our urban planners got trained in America, they've killed the cities of India. You know, I mean, there's no place for cycling. I mean, look at any of the Indian cities. Urban planners have ensured there's no place for cyclists, there's no place for walking. We have to reverse the entire process. Reverse the entire process. Cities are livable when you can cycle, when you can walk, when you can take public transportation. That's the future. I totally agree with Amri that the future is shared, connected, and electric. The last word on that last bit about electric or hydrogen has not yet been said. And shared and connected, definitely. Despite all this talk of electric, the total number of electric vehicles at present is just 1% of the total number of cars being bought. And that's simply because the cost of electric vehicle is very high compared to an internal combustion car. But we envisage that innovations and entrepreneurs, many entrepreneurs here, will drive the change. And you don't need one Tesla, you need thousands of entrepreneurs like Elon Musk all over to really ensure that, and our perspective is that by 2027, 28, you know, because the cost of battery is the key. 50% of the cost of a car is the battery. And by 2028, the cost of battery would have fallen from $273 kilowatt hour. That is what it is right now, to about 73 kilowatt hour. And if India makes a breakthrough, then it will fall even lower. So once the cost of battery really falls, by 27, 28, the cost of an electric vehicle would be on par with the cost of internal combustion car. And that is the point when actually demand for electric vehicles will, because India is essentially a very globalized marketplace for automobile and auto components. We have all international players here. So whatever happens internationally will have a huge impact on the Indian market. You have all the major players. You have Mercedes, BMW, Suzuki, Hyundai, Toyota. And we export 25% of our manufactured automobile and auto component parts abroad. 49% of your industry manufacturing comes from automobile and auto component parts. They create a huge amount of jobs. So whatever India does has to be done to size and scale. It has to be done not for the Indian market, but for the global market. And therefore, the challenge lies in making a huge breakthrough in battery. There's a challenge on the lithium and cobalt side there. Whatever we do, and this is what we are doing in the city of Nagpur, you create interoperable charging stations. Don't create monopolies. America has created monopolies. Break them. Create interoperable charging points. And thirdly, ensure that your manufacturing is battery and transportation led here, but it's not for the domestic market alone, but for the global market. India has a huge, huge opportunity. What are the opportunities for India? The opportunity is that the per capita usage of car in India is very low compared to America and the European cities. Very, very low. So you have a point of transition from low per capita usage to electric. The destruction of internal combustion cars in India will be very low as compared to American cities. If you were to destroy all the cars in America today to move to electric vehicles, they will require New York, Washington, LA, and San Francisco, 4 cities to just destroy all the cars they've created. They've built up so many internal combustion cars that they'll need 4 cities or 5 cities to just destroy these cars. So therefore, the per capita usage is very low. Secondly, India's very ambitious strategy of moving towards renewable power to 175 gigawatt. So the challenge is that all your cars must be charged not with coal power, but with renewable power. And as India moves towards a huge drive towards solar power, each one of these electric cars must be charged from solar power at your household level. Every single house must be able to recharge the car at solar level. So India has a huge advantageous position of both because of its weather conditions, of charging from home, making this radical shift towards solar power, and the lowest per capita consumption of car will enable you to make a radical shift towards electric.
Not to mention the extraordinary depth of the talent pool here, not just in IT, but throughout the technical sphere. And indeed, the sort of battery breakthrough that we're all hoping for does appear to be very clearly on the horizon. We know what it is. It's actually being licensed for manufacture now. And we just put out 2 reports together last Wednesday, one on how to have a made-in-India battery strategy to capture most or ultimately perhaps all of the value here, and the other on overcoming the initially higher capital cost of electric vehicles with a policy similar to the one at the core of Norway's policy suite that took that 1% electric vehicle fraction in new sales up to 1/3. It's 50 times the US share. And the policy is called a fee-bate, a cross between a fee and a rebate. So if I go to buy a new vehicle, I pay a fee or get a rebate, which and how big depends on how efficient it is. You can make it revenue neutral, you can make it size neutral, you can make it very profitable for the industry as well as for the consumer. But the consumer then will be able to apply a social, not a private discount rate, which means they'll look at the full life cycle fuel saving of the vehicle when making the purchase decision, not just the first year or two. So that aligns public with private interests. It's a very powerful policy. And we are working on some more papers now on things like the charging infrastructure, the interface with the grid, and so on, so that the cars become assuredly not a grid risk or liability, but a grid asset to help the discoms.
Priyanka, it's very clear that fossil fuels are not going to be fashionable in future. What you're doing is converting plastic waste into fuel. Where all can this fuel be used, and is it as effective as conventional fuel and can be used for the same range and variety of purposes?
Sure. So plastic comes from fuel. So obviously, when you break it down into its basic building blocks, you get a fuel out of it. The push away from fossil fuels, it would be great to find substitutes to how we currently make plastics. But for now, as we have 300 million tons of plastic out there, there needs to be something to address that, which is why we developed the technology we have at Renewilogy to take it back to fuel. And the fuel that we get at the end of the process is basically a product that's already been through the refining process. So it's cleaner than conventional fuel, which you get out of the ground. There's no sulfur and other contaminants in there. It's a pure fuel, so we get a clean spec diesel fuel at the end of the process, which can then be used to make it can actually be used to make new products, new plastics, or it can be used as a substitute for fuel which comes out of the ground. So that way you're able to offset the amount of fuel that you're drilling for. So so that's for the plastic issue. Right now, this is a great way of solving it, but, obviously long term, if we can move away from fossil fuels altogether, that's great, but, there's 300 million tons out there, so, at least this allows us to reverse the process and, create a substitute for something that would otherwise be drilled out of the ground.
Amory, I do want to talk a little bit about the super efficient home. You have one. Mm-hmm. So would you like to tell the audience a little bit more about this? Because you've been living in a super efficient home for the longest time.
A third of a century now. Yeah, it's actually a combined house, indoor, farm, and research center where we hatched our institute for its first 18 years. We're now 35. And my commute to work was 10 meters across the tropical jungle where we've harvested now 69 passive solar banana crops and a lot of other tropical fruits. Very good mangoes and papayas, for example. Now, it turns out this is all at 2,200 meters elevation, where the temperatures used to go as low as minus 44 Celsius on occasion, and the house has no heating system. It uses 6,000-year-old North Chinese passive solar architecture, plus modern technologies like windows that insulate like 16 sheets of glass, but look like 2 and cost less than 3. We super insulate the house. We use ventilation, heat recovery, and the house is quite tight construction. And therefore, once the solar heat gets in, even on a cloudy day, it's enough to heat the house. It can't get out again because of all the insulation and super windows. Sometimes there's too much, and then we just open the vents to let it out. But this costs slightly less than normal to build because we saved more construction cost leaving out the heating system than we paid extra for the efficient technologies that displace the heating system. And it turns out you can do the same thing in your climate because, for example, I was visited early on by an architect from Bangkok who said, well, I've got a hot, wet climate, not a cold, dry one, but seeing what you're doing with integrative design, optimizing the whole building as a system, let me go try that on my own house I'm about to build. So he did. He saved 90% of the air conditioning. It's more comfortable, and it has exactly normal construction cost. So I think everyone in India probably lives in a climate between his and mine, right? And there are indeed Indian examples of mid and high-rise blocks of flats that keep you 11 or 12 Celsius cooler and keep the inner wall of a convectively vented double wall completely dry and free of mold in the monsoon and give you a lot of extra storage space in between the two walls. Extra construction cost is only 2%. Now add an extremely efficient ceiling fan with some new design features of the last few years. That can keep you 7 degrees cooler in comfort sensation. 7 plus 11 or 12, you're in pretty good comfort with no air conditioning. And indeed, a competition is being formed, and there are several, actually three such things we now know of, to promote extremely efficient thermal comfort in India, based in India, with great economics. But that means not just a better air conditioner, although yes, we can quadruple or so that efficiency. But also, there are a lot of other technologies you can use to keep cool, and the most important ones are in building design and in delivering comfort to the person, not to the building. I once asked my hostess in Tokyo, why don't you heat your house? She very sensibly said, why should I? Is the house cold? The house has no nervous system, no comfort sensation. The people do. So we should deliver comfort to the people as we deliver task lighting on our desk. And indeed, in my own office, the temperature in the building is within a couple of degrees of 21 all year. It's another passive, net positive, all passive building, you know, no heating or cooling equipment. But we have hyper chairs with 3 little silent computer fans and a couple of electric car seat heaters, all run off a lithium battery pack. You adjust it to your individual requirements. And the space could be anywhere between less than 18 and 30 degrees, and you'd still feel perfectly comfortable in that chair. Now our building has 11 ways of keeping you cool, 10 ways of keeping you warm. None of them involves blowing hot or cold air at you. But if you do this right, the building costs the same as normal to build, just like European passive buildings, plus or minus 2 percentage points from normal construction cost. Much better comfort, no emissions, you're not stealing from your kids.
Amitabh, I'm going to swing the last question at you, and after that we'll open it to the audience. You know, you've executed many a project in your lifetime and in a complex place like India. It's often argued that large projects are likely to be, you know, not be so successful, and we should start small. How do you feel about that? Is that really the formula? Start small and.
You know, the first time I met Amri was when Mr. Narayan Murthy told me about him. You know, Narayan Murthy of Infosys. He'd helped them to save 40% of their electricity in their headquarters, in their Infosys unit or something. And we started working with him, and I told Amri, why are you wasting your time in the United States of America? You know, Rocky Mountain Institute in USA. I mean, Americans have the greatest number of innovators like Amri and Priyanka, but they have no challenges. You know, there are no problems. So, you go to Silicon Valley, I mean, the highest number of, greatest density of innovators with the least number of challenges and least number of problems. So I told, I told Amri, you relocate to India, because the challenges are in India. You know, I mean, you have challenges of providing water which is free from fluoride and arsenic-free water to your citizens. You have challenges of providing seed and fertilizer to your farmers based on real-time basis, looking at weather and soil condition. You have challenges of you know, waste being converted into energy. So many challenges. And if you're able to find solutions for 1 billion people of India, you are actually finding solutions for the next 7 billion people of the world who move from poverty to middle class. And that is really the challenge of the world. You know, finding solutions for the 7 billion people. So my view is that both Priyanka and Amri are wasting their time in the United States. They should relocate to India.
We are hoping to set up an office here.
Priyanka, make sure you get a joining letter before you leave Congress. Okay. I'm now going to open this to the audience. May I please request that you identify yourselves and ask the question. I think women first, so the lady at the back, please.
Hi, I'm Asha Jadeja, and I'm actually from United States. Apologies, and
we're already sorry for you.
But I'm a local venture capitalist from Palo Alto, California, and I'm just beginning to start investing in Indian startups. And first of all, I want to just say to the entrepreneurs and to all of you that India has become a rocket ship. It's going through the roof, and I'm actually, my degree is in, closet degree is in civil engineering and urban planning. I'm an urban planner. And I've been working pretty closely with somebody called Peter Hirschberg, the guy who does Maker Cities. And what I've just stumbled upon is that the way Indian entrepreneurs are thinking is it's actually community first. And this is a model that is I have never seen it before in any part of the world as far as entrepreneurship goes. I'm seeing that Indian entrepreneurs are really adding community as a critical element in their solutions of startups or any technologies that they're thinking of. And this is something that's very indigenous to perhaps to the Indian way of thinking. I'm from Ahmedabad, where we have the pole structure in the urban, maybe everybody is familiar with it, but we have the poles that were initially developed for the purpose of community and for commerce, actually. And I was wondering if, as we go forward, if in India we have, from policy perspective, we have a sort of, some kind of an imperative to maybe look into some of these older structures to see if there is some wisdom that we can gain from that as we look at urban solutions, all for batteries, for everything,
Is your
Absolutely
both of you,
right.
for all
And
of
while we're doing this, let's do deep retrofits on a lot of the more energy-intensive buildings. Our best in the U.S. so far with a half-century-old, very difficult big government building was a 70% saving cost-effectively. And indeed, all the skills exist in India to do that. You mentioned Infosys. Rohan Parikh's team there built 15 lakh square meters of offices, which got to EPI 66 compared to 250, 350 for most of the existing ones. And so they're saving 80% of the energy compared to the new office norm in India, and they cost 10 or 20% less to build, and they're much more pleasant, healthful, and productive to be in. That sort of skill exists here. We need to apply it. And indeed, I don't see why new buildings here shouldn't be net zero energy. That is being required increasingly in a range of climates around the world by progressive state and local governments. And it actually can make the building completely resilient as well. So it runs off the solar power on the roof. You can do this now up to as much as 14 stories high, and it works with or without the grid, so your power is never interrupted. Yes. Absolutely right.
do you want to respond to that?
Hello, good morning. Sorry. Good morning, panelists. I think I'm an entrepreneur. I'm into electric vehicles. We made battery-operated two-wheelers and three-wheelers out of Coimbatore. So, Priyanka, we just wanted to tell you that we were the first ones to implement a system where garbage collection is done by women. Training has been given, and it's been completely done on battery-operated vehicles, and the model has been sustainable. The only challenge that I'm going through right now is that we are not able to scale beyond that pilot that we have done. And we've got a lot of resistance in the government to be able to push this policy ahead because the Tamil Nadu state don't have an EV policy. That's one challenge. So I don't know how NITI Aayog can help us to be able to influence the government to be able to take this EV initiative seriously. That's number one. And number two is that we are completely a women-run company, manufacturing company, 30% women workforce. And we wanted to ensure that a lot of technologies are done from engineers from tier 2 to tier 4 towns. And one of the biggest problem in electric vehicles is the power electronics component, which is all largely bought out. So I just wanted to suggest NITI Aayog that we should just call back all the power electronics professionals all over the world, Indians who have gone back to other countries, invite them back. And I think we should focus on technology and innovation because it's going to be software that's going to be driving hardware.
Because I see lots of hands in the audience, may I please request that we keep our questions really short? Gentleman there in front.
A question each. Suhail Al-Ghusaybi from Bahrain. A question each for a panelist as quickly as possible. First of all, Amitabh, you're awesome. I love your attitude. Thank you. A question for you. I'm just glad I'm not American in here right now. The question for you, sir, is we in the private sector, what can we do? We don't drive policy. How can we push towards sustainable cities? Question for you, Priyanka, is plastic recycling, is it real or is it fake? Because how many times can you recycle plastic? It still stays as part of the 300 million tons out there. And finally, Amri, the question for you, sir, if you can speak briefly about lithium. Is it available? Is it sustainable? People talk about there not being enough lithium in the world.
There's not a lithium problem.
Okay. Quick answer, thank you.
So, firstly, I think this is really the opportunity. I mean, this is the age of innovation. Every single individual that I met here in this whole conference, everybody is working on some solution, some problem which is related to the community. I mean, of the GDP comes from cities. 78% of pollution, CO2 emission comes from cities. We have to find solutions for the cities. And therefore, all the challenges, I mean, all the innovation, all the entrepreneurial spirit has to be focused here in terms of garbage management, in terms of public transportation, in terms of water recycling. And therefore, this opens up a vast number of opportunities for both entrepreneurial energy, a vast number of opportunities for innovation. And I think this is where real entrepreneurial spirit has to come in. And I'm really delighted. You know, every single individual that I met here at this conference, everyone is trying to find a solution for some of India's problems. You know, I mean, all of them are looking to find. I mean, this was not the case 3-4 years back. You know, when we started the Startup India movement 2 years back, all the Indian startups were going to Silicon Valley or they were moving to Singapore. Now I suddenly find Mitra Biotech and all of them moving back. We've been able to create an ecosystem where all these startups are moving from Silicon Valley back to Bangalore and Hyderabad. We're finding all of them finding solutions to the problem of India in education, in health, in social innovation. One Indian girl has been able to teach 9 million Indians how to speak English in 1 year. No school, no college has been able to do it. Look at Mitra Biotech. Look at Mitra Biotech, what they've done. I mean, they're relocated from Silicon Valley for personalized cancer care work in Bangalore, or Consio Medical. I was not aware that 100 million people suffered from issues of stool management. And Consio Medical has made a massive breakthrough in that area, providing huge solution, and all their adapters being accepted by all the medical institutes across the world. Or look at Baiju. You know, I mean, Mark Zuckerberg is invested in his educational startup. So all the challenges are here. You have to find solutions for India here. And if you find, I mean, greatest opportunity is in this land here now. And you have to find solutions for all the problems that we are finding. And that is the way to lift people above poverty lines. The next 7 billion people provide you the opportunity. It's not the 1% people, the wealthy people living abroad in the western part of the world. It's this part of the world which needs solutions. And if you are able to make a breakthrough, and we in NITI Aayog and in Government of India will create the ecosystem for you. So relocate from Bahrain also to India.
A question, please, to Amitabh on shared mobility.
He had a question for
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, well, just quickly on that, any type of recycling, there is some downcycling that happens. So, you know, really the mantra, reduce, reuse, recycle, you know, we need to think about how do we really reduce our consumption and reuse items and really see recycling as a last resort and not just think that, you know, we're able to fully complete the circle there. Yeah, next question.
Okay, I'm not from the US. My question is...
You made that a qualifier now.
I'm from Mobileye, an Intel company. We're based in Jerusalem, Israel. And my question is with regard to shared mobility and electric vehicles. How do you see the role, and I'm asking about timetable and roadmap with regard to in-vehicle technologies? So I'm talking about ADAS, Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, collision avoidance, semi-autonomous and autonomous technologies. What role do these have? And I'm assuming that these are inevitable, whatever the case may be, including in India.
So, you know, I'm a believer in shared and connected vehicles. I'm not a believer in driverless cars. Yeah. And the reason for that is that, you know, the nature of jobs is changing. The future of work is changing. And today in India, Ola, one of our startup entrepreneurs, has been able to create 900,000 jobs. 900,000 jobs. Uber here has created about 450,000 jobs, which are not calculated. These are not drivers, these are car owners. But the future is in shared mobility because only about 4% of the, you know, all the vehicles in India, only 4% of their actual lifespan is being used in India. So all the cars that we own actually should be used for, you know, for sharing and connecting them to each other, which is inevitable. It'll happen. I mean, it is bound to happen. I mean, looking at examples of Oyo rooms in India or Airbnb and Uber, the shared and connected world is on us, and this is inevitable. And soon you'll find that all the cars that are parked at home will all be used for sharing and purposes, because all devices will get connected with IoT. I mean, and they'll all be cloud linked. I mean, we have this great example which we've demonstrated here of Chitle Dairy in India, which using Dell's IoT actually was able to scale up its production. It linked up all cows with RFID technology and linked it up to the cloud. And from 6 million production, they raised it to 60 million production, just using technology. And this was all through RFID using Dell technology, IoT. And that's going to be the future. Technology will drive change. There'll be such a huge process of disruption taking place in this area, and the next public transportation will be the biggest area of disruption the world has ever seen in the next decade.
I think we've run out of time.
I have the mic. Can I ask a question?
Well, okay, no. You might have to be a woman again. Woman first, and then the last question goes to a woman as well. So
I thought we were talking about equality as well.
Women first.
Prosperity for all.
That's my quality.
I'm Shaila Rao Mistry, and I do come in peace. I was born in Hyderabad, I'm Telugu, but I do live in California, sir, so I'm sure you'll welcome me with open arms. My company manufactures, designs, innovates for aerospace, medical device company, JACO and STEM Institute. The reason I'm giving the background is this, that our focus for our human-machine interface, which goes into equipment that's millions of dollars, our focus is on the user, because the equipment and the device is only as useful as the ease of use for the user. So bringing the question back to us, what is your plan and what are the comments, or how do all of us bring the people's mindset to being able to work and move towards this compact city, recycling, all these aspects that we're talking about? How do we bring the people's mindsets to be commensurate with the technology? Because it comes down to the people. We look at Japan and we see how well that model of the mindset goes with the technology. I mean, the public toilets are so clean. Everybody bows to each other. They're so respectful. Packed trains and everyone's so respectful. So what is our plan? I call it ours because I'm glad to work with you on this. How do we bring all of us, the people who are here, willing to participate in this new world? So, and I'm very impressed by the growth in Hyderabad, coming after 10 years.
I think people like you must visit. No, it's very important what I'm saying. People like you must go to some of the rural areas, particularly girls' schools, to see how we've changed. It's not about just construction of toilets that has been done. A huge movement around Swachh Bharat. This whole Swachh Bharat movement is not about construction of toilets. It's about the change of mindsets, about how the softer element is the more difficult element, changing mindsets, and how we've ensured that all the toilets which have been built are well maintained and are regularly utilized. How, girls, their ability to go to schools, it has greatly enhanced their ability to go to schools, simply because we were able to provide toilets to women. A huge movement in terms of, shifting away from, the nature of cooking at home across Indian households for women has changed because we've provided gas-based solutions for all of them at home. This has been one of the biggest movements, or the movement towards ensuring that we are able to provide electricity to every single village and every single household. So huge movements across all these changes which has had impact. And now this whole movement about housing for all, about construction material, new kind of thing. So it's important that some of you go to areas where major changes have taken place, and it will be but in all these areas, the important thing has not been the hardware element, but the software element of changing the mindset. And this whole movement about Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao is what? It's about, saying that actually the girls are doing better than boys. And let me tell you this, in each one of these areas, look at the competitive exams in India. Every single competitive exam in India, the women are doing much better than the boys. much better than the boys. So, you know, I studied in St. Stephen's College, which was an all-males bastion when my daughter went there. By that time on merit, almost 89% of the students were girls. So the principal said that we should give 10% extra marks to boys to ensure that it remains a co-ed. You know, otherwise the girls will keep getting in. So, you know, the girls, as long as you keep providing opportunities, girls will do much, much better. You just have to ensure that consciously, and that's a huge onerous responsibility on all the men in this room, that we provide better opportunities for women. You know, and gender parity, if we consciously push for it, India will be a great country.
How are we going to reclaim our youth from the American ideology? What is the plan there?
Plan is to do our things our way. Just don't copy the Western model.
But that's happening, right?
No, no.
All
Yeah.
by itself.
That's why we're here. It's a very exciting time to be in India.
Exactly. That's over here.
I think that's a wrap for now. And those of you who have more questions, top tip, mob them as they leave the venue. So with that, I'd like to thank all my panelists. Amri, thank you so much. Amitabh. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Priyanka.
Thank you. Yeah, wonderful.
For your extra time. I think that people are starting to come into the hall, and welcome. We are going to start the third section of the GIST Catalyst, or Global Innovation Through Science and Technology Initiative, pitch competition here at the GES. We will be focusing today on the health and life sciences. If you had joined us yesterday, we have done the energy and infrastructure, as well as the fintech and digital economy sections. The format for today will have 6 pitchers providing their insights on their startups in 3-minute presentations, followed by 5 minutes of Q&A exclusively from our fantastic panel of judges. We are blessed here to have a very respectable amount of expertise, including Loretta McCarthy from Golden Seeds, Ramesh from Indaya Partners, Tiffany Wilson from the Global Center for Medical Innovation, and Vita from IPK Knowledge Park here in India, as well as Bouquet Churahar, who I pronounced correctly today, thank goodness, who is the VP for Operations with Global Entrepreneurship Network. I'd like to give everyone here a round of applause before we start, and we'll be kicking things off. And we're lucky enough to start with Cesar Garcia of Vasatech.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. This is my first pitch competition, and I'm glad to be able to do it here. I was really, really looking forward to this because I knew how distinguished the panels were going to be. The GIST has been putting on a great show for us. I'd like to tell you a little bit about a world health problem that 100 years ago killed about 5% of the world population, and this in a non-global world. What we had is a viral disease that became an epidemic. And unfortunately, we ended up losing a lot of people. A lot of people died simply because of this viral disease. Fast forward 100 years later, and current technology has still not been able to solve this problem. Vaccitech has patent-pending technology that seeks to address these problems. Every single year, the World Health Organization begins a dance, and they start identifying viral influenza viruses that may be the ones that will be circulating, and that's what they start doing. That's what they start using to be able to develop the vaccine. Well, the big problem here is that it takes 6 to 8 months to manufacture this vaccine. And since the influenza virus continues to mutate, we run the risk of this virus mutating to the point where the vaccine that's being developed can either be weak or, in the worst case, ineffective. So what we need to do is we need to find novel, new techniques to be able to manufacture vaccines much faster. Our technology uses molecular engineering techniques to isolate the specific part of the virus that elicits an immune response in the human body. In short, what we've been able to do with our platform technology is to make the influenza vaccine 16 times faster and 100 times cheaper than current egg-based technology. 2 weeks instead of 6 months. Pennies instead of dollars. Being able to produce our vaccines much more rapidly gives us the opportunity to be able to address pandemics faster, create vaccines, and get them into the hands of the World Health Organizations that are tasked with making sure that our populations are safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Forgive me, I'm a little hard of hearing, so I need to...
No problem.
Thank you.
A little bit about yourself and your team.
My name is Cesar Garcia. I'm a serial entrepreneur. Don't have any background in science, but I know a good idea when I see it. Dr. Luis Manuel Rodriguez, who is right behind you, if you have any technical questions, we'll be able to help you. He's a PhD out of the Monterrey Institute of Technology in Mexico. Our company is a US-based company. We're a Wyoming corporation with our laboratories in Mexico to take advantage of the US know-how and Mexican labor.
At what stage is your technology? Have you...
We're preclinical at the moment.
Proof of concept?
We're preclinical.
Could you speak a bit about the cost of your vaccines relative to what is currently used?
Well, we know that we've looked at the cost of trying to remember forgive me, I'm drawing a blank here. But Dr. Rodriguez, thank you. The CDC puts out a list of the prices of their vaccines, and the average price there was about $7 for the cost of the vaccine. We're down to pennies.
Great.
Simply because of the techniques that we use. We use a yeast, a specific yeast, to manufacture our vaccine.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the regulatory hurdles?
For us right now, the biggest regulatory hurdle is going to be FDA. And what we're looking for is a strategic partner that will be able to take a look at our technology and help us through those FDA hurdles. We know that other countries, it's easier to get regulations in other countries, but the standard is FDA. So everything that we do is based on FDA trials.
Do you anticipate any challenges with some of the novel vaccine delivery systems?
We haven't explored that yet. I think what we're trying to do right now is make sure that we get our technology finished to the point where we can start looking at the delivery systems. We understand that there are a lot of patches that are coming about. We're actually talking to a couple of folks in Australia that have some novel delivery systems, and they want to see how we can work with them.
Have you filed any IP as yet?
We are patent pending. Our patent attorneys are Wilson Sonsini, Goodrich, and Rosati.
Which market do you plan to enter first?
Well, right now we have a multi-pronged approach. We're talking to a lot of people. We have interest right now. Dr. Rodriguez was in China a few months ago, and based on the presentation that he did, Sinopharm has shown some interest in what we're doing. Early on, to see if we were on the right track, we spoke with Sanofi Pasteur, shared with them some of our results, and they were very interested in us. The thing that they told us is they want us to get past animal trials in ferrets to be able to make sure that our technology does work. We had a previous version of our technology that worked very well, and we had limited animal trials in mice, but it wasn't highly scalable. So Dr. Rodriguez went back to the drawing board, reconfigured things, and we were very surprised at our new technology. Not only was it highly scalable, but it was even more robust than what we had previously. Yes.
It seems like such an obvious problem to solve for the reasons you stated earlier. Do you know if you have other competition that are trying to solve the same problem?
There are other companies that are working on this because this is a global health problem. When you're talking about in the United States, we have 25 to 50,000 people that die every year, and this is one of the developed countries. What happens in other countries? So there are a lot of companies that are working in this space, but they're looking at universal flu vaccines, which are much more difficult, much more expensive, and you end up leaving a majority of the world out. Our idea is to democratize the process to be able to get our technology and our vaccines into the rest of the world. We figured that based on the size of our bioreactors, in about 30,000 square feet, we can create enough vaccine to inoculate every single person in Mexico.
All right. Thank you, judges, and thank you, Cesar.
Thank you.
All right, let's welcome to the stage Fiona Edwards-Murphy, newly Dr. Fiona Edwards-Murphy of Aspis Protect.
Imagine walking into a supermarket and realizing that there weren't any apples. There were no blueberries, no almonds. 1/3 of the food we eat every day relies on having access to healthy honeybees. But there's a problem. Honeybees are not healthy. There are a variety of diseases, pests, and hive problems that are spreading faster and hitting harder than they ever have before in history. And now it's common in many parts of the world for beekeepers to lose up to half of their honeybees every single year. This isn't just a problem for the €3 billion international honey market, but also for the global agri-food industry, because honeybees provide an estimated €153 billion worth of pollination to the global food supply every year. What this means for us is that as wild pollinators continue to disappear, we're going to need more beekeepers with more bees to help secure our food supply. My name is Fiona Edwards-Murphy. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Apis Protect. And I've spent the last 4 years working on my PhD in the area of Internet of Things applications for honeybee health. I have 8 publications on the topic, and I'm a recognized thought leader on the topic of honeybee monitoring. Following my research, I realized that technology can help beekeepers scale up their honey production. And that's where Apis Protect was born. Apis is the Latin word for bee, so our name literally means we protect the bees. And how we do that is using our unique Internet of Things platform. We embed sensors inside the beehive and collect a variety of data about the colony. We apply big data and machine learning techniques to extract valuable information about the hive. And then we provide beekeepers with actionable insights as part of a subscription model. Our value proposition to those beekeepers is that we provide a plug-and-play solution that instantly provides them with the information they need to reduce losses and increase productivity in their hives. I've built a 3-people full-time team in Apis Protect with decades of commercial, engineering, scientific, and beekeeping experience. And we've spent the last 12 months validating the need for a product like ours around the world. We've developed version 2 of our platform, which will be rolling out to 200 beehives as part of a commercial trial, starting in December of this year. And we've started raising our seed round of €500,000, which will give us 12 months of runway to reach our Series A round. Over the next 5 years, we plan to bring the Apis Protect solution to 100,000 hives. That represents just 0.22% of our addressable market of Europe, the Americas, and Oceania. That will give us recurring revenues of over €10 million. And following this, once we've reached scale in our data, we plan to explore a data sales product around the valuable environmental, agricultural, and scientific data that we are also collecting from those beehives. Apis Protect is using a groundbreaking technology to help our most important little friends stay healthy and continue providing us with food for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Questions?
Thank you for this education about bee colonies. And my question is, what is the cost of one installation, and are you able to quantify the results that may have for the productivity of that?
Yes. So the cost to us is right now, because we're on a low run, it's over €100. But once we get to a high scale run, because it's a hardware product, we're getting that down below €70 per hive. And the subscription model is initially in year one, it will be a €70 subscription for data and €60 hardware cost, and then a recurring annual subscription of €70 per hive. And what that means for the beekeeper is that they can prevent the loss of a hive. So we detect a variety of problems such as swarming, queen problems, diseases and pests. And if a beekeeper fails to detect any of those problems, they can lose their colony. So that will be an outright cost for them of €200 to replace the colony. And also they'll lose the production from that beehive. So depending on the market that they operate in, so if they're in a high value honey market, or if they're in the pollination industry, say in the United States, that can cost them up to thousands of euro for that year.
Thank you.
Okay.
Who else is working on this type of solution, and what are the biggest hurdles that you see in terms of commercial adoption?
The biggest hurdles. I think it probably is primarily around education for the beekeepers, because beekeeping is kind of a very traditional practice around the world, and beekeepers generally don't use technology in their practice. So what we've really done is started to embark on an educating the beekeepers on how sensors can help them, and also making our product incredibly uninvasive to the beekeeping process. So it's completely plug and play. The beekeeper doesn't need to know anything about technology. We're using very ubiquitous networks. We're using 2G at the moment, so they don't need to worry about if they have an antenna nearby them or what kind of, they don't need to understand any of that. So that's really how we're approaching that problem.
If you didn't do this, how adversely will the beekeeping industry be affected in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years? I mean, like the problems that beekeepers are facing are massive. So at the moment, the size of the colonies, the number of colonies are only growing in Asia.
So you could give some numbers?
Yeah, there are 91 million beehives around the world. There are about half in Asia and Africa, and half in our target markets of Europe, the Americas, and Oceania. And the problem is that there should actually be way more in those three markets, because that's where beekeeping has been practiced for a very long time. But over the last 30 years, the volume of hives in all of those markets has completely stagnated because of the problems I was describing earlier. And what we need, as the human population continues to grow, we need the beehive population to also grow, because the number of colonies we have is directly proportional to the amount of food we can produce. So we need those numbers to continue rising as the human population rises around the world, and that's what we're really helping to secure.
Could you tell us a little bit about your competition? I think you were asking a similar question earlier.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sure. So there are a variety of other people trying to enter the market with also sensor technology in beehives. But where we really have an advantage is that we're based on scientific research, which a lot of the competitors aren't. We're approaching it with our subscription-based price model, whereas the competition is approaching it with a upfront hardware cost of €400 to €600, which obviously doesn't make sense compared to the cost of a colony, which is €200. And the other advantage that we really have is that completely ubiquitous way that we're approaching the technology. We're not providing the beekeeper with streams of data about the humidity and carbon dioxide levels inside in their hive, which the competitors are doing. We're actually providing them with information in the form of sentences, text alerts, email alerts with, this is the problem that your hive is experiencing, this is what you can do to help it. So they don't need to learn about what humidity means for a beehive, which most beekeepers don't know or care about. They get information that they can act on instantaneously.
Thank you, Fiona.
Is this technology very
Ramesh?
specific for bee colonies or any adjacent areas you have?
Yeah, do you mind if I answer? Okay, I'm sorry. I can talk
Thank you,
after
Ramesh. We're
about
going to
that.
have to transition. Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you.
All right, we're welcome to the stage Raj Lakshmi, Doctor of Terra Blue Exploration Technologies.
Good morning, everybody, and namaskar. My name is Rajlakshmi Borthakur, and I am the CEO and founder of TerraBlue XT. When it comes to saving a life, timing is the most crucial factor. When it comes to living a healthy life, prevention is better than cure, and that is something we all know. And that is why at TerraBlue XT, we are creating futuristic technologies to make human life safer and preserve a life at all cost. We are building wearable technologies that sense medically relevant information from human bodies. Our IoT system will enable healthcare professionals and governments to provide healthcare support to people in the remotest parts of the world. Our artificial intelligence platform allows doctors to understand the evolution of a disease, understand the efficacy of medicine, and provide intervention before it is too late. My son Tejas, who is 6.5 years old now, had epilepsy since birth. It was so bad that he had to be hospitalized every time he had an attack. If we did not hospitalize him in time, it would be life-threatening for him. I was desperate and I wanted a solution. I couldn't find any, and I ended up creating a solution on my own. There are 50 million people with epilepsy in the world. 10 million of them live in India, and 4.3 million of them in the United States. 70% of these people with epilepsy live in developing countries, and 1.5 million deaths in 2015 are attributed to causes related to epilepsy. But do you know the most interesting thing? It is that 70% of these people with this population of epilepsy can live near normal lives if they get the treatment on time and they are diagnosed on time. And this is one of the areas that TerraBlue XT is working on. Apart from epilepsy, we are also working in other areas of neurology, cardiology, and lifestyle-related diseases and disorders. The promise of our solution has encouraged foreign governments and organizations like the government of Australia and the government of Belgium to invite us in their countries to start our operations there. My child is a special child. He's not like you and me, and that has impacted me very badly. To all my capabilities, whatever it is possible, I will make sure, it will be my life's mission to make sure nobody goes through the trauma that he did. It is the mission of TerraBlue Technology to create life-saving devices and systems and make it accessible to people all over the world. Thank you very much.
Can you tell us the scientific data you have on epilepsy, especially with your device?
Sure. So
how accurate is the prediction?
Sure. So the accuracy right now stands at 98.99%. Our clinical trial partners in India is National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences. It's a premier institute of neuroscience in Asia. We are also collaborating with Royal Melbourne Hospital and Flores Institute of Brain Science. We are also going to start our trials in AIIMS in New Delhi and also UCL in Belgium.
Just want to clarify, with epilepsy, for instance, what is being measured? The likelihood of having an episode or something else?
Yeah, so we measure the likelihood of having the episode and provide a prediction. it is not possible to provide predictions to everyone, but there are like about 70 to 80% of the people, it is possible to provide them a prediction so that emergency care could be given to them and the attack aborted. And the more we keep aborting the attacks, the better is their quality of life.
Are there any, excuse me, interoperability challenges, particularly in India, and interaction with EMRs?
No, so we are making a very open system so that we can connect with APIs. Whoever gives us the APIs will be able to connect it. That's the way, it's a very fluid system that we have designed. And it's mostly Python based. And we have thought about the fact that organizations and hospitals around the world uses different kinds of systems. So we are, as far as possible, we have trying to keep it very fluid. We are also trying to be HIPAA compliant, though in India it is not required to be, but we are trying to do that.
Could you tell us a little bit about your team?
Sure. So I am the founder, and I am supported by a team of about 27 people. And we have about 7 doctors who work as advisors with us, and they're the top neurologists in the country. We also have cardiologists, sleep specialists, and psychologists. So we have a total team of about 12 doctors. The person who looks after our hardware engineering was the ex-CEO of Maxim Integrated. It's a $1 billion chip manufacturing company. And apart from that, we have like several people who advise us. And in terms of my own team, we have a team of data scientists. We have hardware engineers, software engineers, a big data team, and a research and marketing team.
How old is your company?
Ma'am, it is 1.5 years old.
And did you say you have revenue?
Pardon?
Do you currently have revenue?
We don't have revenue, ma'am, but we do have a lot of traction. As in very recently, we have, we are on the verge of signing agreements with several organizations. So we are looking at revenue, hitting revenue by March or April of this year.
We have time for one more question.
But you've not completed your trials as yet. You said
we are doing our, it's going on.
Yeah. So till you complete and you get the approvals, you won't be able to launch the product.
So ma'am, this is for the epilepsy device. We have completed trial for our mental health device. We are also working in the area of mental health, and the trial is completed, and it is ready to hit the market. So March, April is when we are thinking of putting it in the market, and we are now waiting for compliance. We have submitted the documentation, so we are hoping it will come by that time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Raji.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll welcome to the stage Christy Gornis of Defendables.
I grew up in a small town. One weekend during my freshman year in college, I returned home for a visit and ran into Kevin, an old friend. We decided to go for a car ride together. We were having a conversation driving down the road when suddenly he stopped the car and sexually assaulted me. I was unable to fight off my attacker. Afterwards, I wanted to jump out of the car, but he took off driving again. His tone got angrier as he spoke, while he held a shotgun in his lap. The car sped up to over 100 miles per hour on that pitch black road. At that point, my only goal was to make it home alive. Hello, my name is Christy Gornis, and as a survivor of that attack, I know firsthand the importance of being able to defend myself. Now, as a mother to 5 girls, I refuse to ever let that happen to one of them. The United Nations has declared violence against women a global pandemic, stating that 7 out of 10 women will become victims. That's 2.6 billion women worldwide who will experience physical violence and sexual assault in their lifetime. For all of those reasons, I invented Defendables. Defendables is your wearable self-defense. This small pod is filled with the strongest form of pepper spray that will stop an attacker, giving you those precious moments to get away. Defendables is worn discreetly anywhere on your body. I'm actually wearing 3 right now. But my favorite Defendables is the Spider-Man-inspired D-Ring. You just point and spray. Defendables will also include technology, a GPS locating and emergency notification system. but technology will not fight off your attacker. You must first use the pepper spray for self-protection. Last year, I licensed Defendables to Sabre Red, the world's leader in pepper spray and personal safety products. With their distribution channels, we will have automatic placement in over 30,000 retailers in 60 countries. They also provide free pepper spray for emerging economies. With this licensing business model, we will greatly save on overhead and spend our time on expanding our product line and also co-branding with large companies like Nike. Defendables is your simple solution to personal safety. You can be your own hero. Thank you very much.
What is the price, and are they refillable?
That they are not refillable. Pepper spray is a very controlled substance. It's very difficult for us to fill in this small of a pod. The pod will sell for less than $10. I'm hoping to get it around $5 or $6, but don't quote me on that. The accessories that the pod will clip into, a clip, the ring. I also have a version that is integrated directly into your clothing, hence the ability to co-brand with a fabric company, Spanx, clip it on your bra, wherever it might be. So then the price will increase $15 or more. And the housing unit for the GPS and emergency notification, because it's not based on Bluetooth like all of the other wearable safety devices, it will be a little bit more expensive. The clip or the housing unit will probably run $50, and we're working on the battery for that. It could last a year or two, it just depends.
Do you have any intellectual property?
Yes, we have several patents not only on the pod but also on our accessories.
Tell us a little bit about the team.
The team. Yes, I've been an inventor for about 10 years. I started inventing products for my children. I have juvenile products, several on the market that are patented. I consult out most of my team. I have 2 sets of engineers. I hire my IP. I've got a CFO that is working pro bono. I've got a project manager that I haven't paid in 2 years. I bootstrap all of my products, so I've got to partner with people that really believe in the product and will help me for a low cost or practically nothing. So I've taken products from concept to market successfully myself. I know how it works. I know how expensive it is, and how to take it to the retailers and brand and market them as well.
Could you just say a little bit more about the notification system? How does that work?
Sure. The pod will clip into an accessory that will have a SIM-based, radio frequency-based, like your cell phone has a SIM card. So we'll have a SIM card in the unit. We'll have a button that if you are in an emergency type situation, then you would push that button. It would notify through the satellite system, so you don't have to rely on a phone. Most often you drop your phone, or you might not have it with you when you're attacked. So did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
In that case, you need a call center.
Yes, I already have partnered with a company that has this type of product on the market. We've talked about the expense as well as how to integrate it with the pod. So we will not be developing that platform on our own. We will work with another company that already does it. Right. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Christy. All right, now I welcome to the stage Mai Nu of CLAS Healthcare.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mai. I'm the founder and CEO of CLAS Healthcare. Today, I would like to talk about the patient information exchange solution. As you know that nowadays, the healthcare information is distributed in different places, like the hospital information system, like the insurance system, like the personal medical devices. With our solution, we will have to collect the data from different places. And after that, we use the data analytics and machine learning to turn it into the insight and foresight for disease and population health management. Our solution consists of online appointment system, HIPAA-compliant patient health, HIPAA-compliant patent pending electronic medical record, and HIPAA-compliant patient health record. Our solution can get the data from many places, and we can integrate with the existing system. We don't replace the existing system, but we integrate with it. Our solution, and today in Vietnam, we have 1,039 public hospitals, 169 private hospitals, and more than 3,000 private clinics that could become our customer. And the market potential is more than 14 million US dollar per year. And today we have three kinds of pricing models. It can be the subscription, or package, or pay-per-use. And we have a very strong team with 5 members who have many experience on the role they play in the company. And in addition, we also have 3 doctors who advise for our solution. And now we are looking for 500,000 US dollars to expand our solution in Vietnam and in Asia Pacific in next 18 months. We have a good solution, we have a strong team, and we have the good connection with Microsoft that can help us to go to the market, and we believe that we can succeed. Please help us to make our dream come true. Thank you for listening.
Questions?
Is the pain point large enough, or are there some adjacent areas where you can increase your revenue potential?
Yeah. The pain point is now the healthcare information is distributed in many places. So we build up a solution that can collect the data in many places. And then after that, we use machine learning to make it into the insights and foresight for disease and population health management. Yeah.
Do the pain points expand? Are they unique to the healthcare system in Vietnam, or do they expand globally?
Actually, we would like to expand globally. Now we would like to expand in Vietnamese to have the proven solution first, and after that we expand to the Southeast Asia and another country. Yeah.
Could you please speak about your own background, how you came about this?
Actually, my background actually I graduated from the University of Economics on the bank financial, but I work for the software management software project director for more than 8 years, and after that we built up our solution with the healthcare. Yeah. Thank you.
What is the uniqueness of this solution? Because there are so many similar solutions that exist.
No, the difference is our solutions. We collect the data. Yeah, we collect the data from many places and put it into one place, and we use the predicted tool to pick up the useful information and to support to manage the health. Yeah.
What kind of data you collect and what kind of insights you give to the hospital management?
Actually, we just collect the patient information. It means that that is the property of the patient. We cannot collect for example, for electronic medical records is the hospital property, so we cannot collect it. Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, join me in thanking Mai.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, and our final presenter today is Satyan Sangahari of Regrow.
Hi, good morning. Satyen Sanghvi, Chief Scientific Officer at Regrow. Today, we all know healthcare has three main delivery systems. One is the immunization, which is through vaccinations for preventing it. Second is the illness, which is mainly driven by generic medication for managing it. And third is the injury, which is mainly by replacement for fixing it. However, there is no curative approach available here. So, over the last 8 years, we developed a solution called cells replacing pills. And it has three unique advantages for patients at large. One, it's permanent. Second, it's easy because it's minimally invasive. And third, it's natural, so no biocompatibility issues. So how it works is basically, there are two models of cell-based delivery systems. One is autologous, meaning one's own cells, which are taken, extracted from the body, cultured, and re-implanted back at the damaged area. And that is for individual use. And second is the allogenic model, which is donor-derived and used for multiple individuals multiple times. So two of our products from the autologous model have successfully completed phase 3 randomized clinical trials and been tested over 600 patients in early osteoarthritis of the knee and hip. They also have been approved by Indian FDA and Ministry of Health, and that marks an entry of India's official entry into cell therapeutics as well. So looking at the market, as per the national registry data, there are approximately 1 million patients in the US and 0.2 million in India undergoing annual knee and hip replacements. That's a total market of $6 billion, dominated by only 4 major players. But the interesting thing is 40% of these patients don't have even half their joint damaged, and their average age is only 46 years. So that gives us a total addressable market of $1.2 billion. To address this and scale up our business model, we're going to address three main factors. One is the accessibility. We're down to 150 doctors, and our first milestone is to reach 2,500 orthopedic surgeons. Second is the affordability. So we have a unique EMI-based payment options, and to also maximize the reimbursements. The third is the awareness, which should be patient-driven, so the patient can come forward. And to achieve this, we've created an ecosystem within our organization where a professionally led leadership team has the access to untapped, expertise available through medical communication, IPR, clinical research, sales, marketing, and business development, present across 35 cities. Having competitive advantage globally, our product does have superior aspects. One, it's patented. Second, it has more reproducible. Third, there is the cost advantage. So today, if you go to Apollo hospitals and ask for a treatment, it'll cost you $5,000 only versus $15,000 only for the product in the US, saving $1.5 billion in annual healthcare costs. So having invested $15 million in the last 8 years, we're looking to take a capital of $10 million to fuel the R&D pipeline and increase manufacturing capacity. Just to summarize, Regrow helps regrow yourselves and rebuild your life. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Satyan. Questions?
You said you did a clinical study.
Yes.
What is the gold standard? Gold standard is a joint replacement. Do you have a study comparing your product versus the gold standard? And are there any economic benefits over the next 5 years, for example, the need for redo surgery with your product versus the gold standard?
Okay. So one thing is that it can't be placebo-driven because it's unethical, because ours is a 2-step procedure, whereas knee replacement is a 1-step procedure. So we had plenty of meetings with the Indian FDA, and it's not possible. Globally, also in the US, it's not possible. Second, coming to this data that I mentioned about 600, the patient follow-up is 8 years with a 92% success ratio. And since this is a cell-based driven procedure, there's no requirement of a revision surgery, as is the case with 20% revision surgeries in knee implants.
What does the competitive landscape look like, and what specifically do your patents cover?
Okay, so the patent covers the process, and the media, the cell culture media that we use is proprietary and trade secret through the US. Coming to the competitive landscape, there are 2 similar nature products in the cartilage space. which are there in the US. And there is one in the phase 3 clinical trials for the bone related therapy, which is in the Europe. So it's not yet in the market. We've entered the market first.
Is this a platform technology and you've chosen to start with orthopedics, or?
So we started with, it's a platform technology for autologous. We started with orthopedics because there was a lot of cutting and stitching, and there's no painkiller, there is no pill or a capsule that you can actually use to take away the pain, because cartilage and bone, they need to be repaired. You have to undergo some kind of surgical intervention. And the third is we're already developing another product in the urology space, which is a rare disease for urethral stricture in male, which we're trying to look at, which is in phase 2 clinical trials right now.
In the clinical trial, whether you use only soft endpoints like pain, or you use hard endpoints like the growth of cartilage on MRI?
Okay, good question. So we use safety and efficacy, both parameters. In efficacy, we have patient scoring index, pain. There are the knee scores. I don't know if you're familiar, IKDC. And obviously, there's MRI. There's T2 mapping in the MRI as well. And if patients elect, they can come and do a relook arthroscopy, which is a keyhole surgery, and check if the cartilage has grown. So we had all these data endpoints in the study.
How much doctor training is required in this?
So since we are up against the 4 big giants, it's very difficult to break into the doctor end. However, we have 150 orthopedic surgeons in India already using this product. So over these years, 150 doctors have adopted this technology. And we're looking at a first milestone of 2,500 doctors, mainly who are trained for this kind of therapeutic offerings. So these are the select prime doctors.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, now we're going to give our judges just a few minutes to confer so that they can decide who is going to be the winner and the runner-up for this section. We will announce the winner and the runner-up here, and the finalist will go on to compete in the finals and be able to compete to be a grand champion that will be announced in the closing plenary. We'll be here for just a few minutes, but I encourage all of you to go on and explore the other resources that you can find at gistnetwork.org or gist.org. In fact, Loretta, who is one of our fantastic judges who's been asking so many wonderful questions, she's on the MentorMatch portal. You too could reach out to Loretta to be able to try to find out more information and mentorship questions to be able to guide your business to more success. I also see a couple of familiar faces out here in the crowd who are